Yeah, what Iran needs to do, and they've already done it, is the real battle is that the court of popular opinion. And in this battle, Israel and America are the weakest they've ever been since ever, I think.
Yeah, well, that's a good
They
point. I mean, it really is. Right, both of them have lost a lot of their soft power over the last couple of years, and yeah, so maybe that's a battle that maybe they could win. Yeah,
Right, and I mean, just think about the position of Iran right now. I mean, countries like Iran, I mean, in China, these are countries that have probably the highest standing they've ever had in amongst Western countries in the past 50 years or longer. Right? Wouldn't you say? Like people are throwing their support behind him because they know they understand this battle now, and they are starting to realize, wait, the bad guy, wait, we're the bad guys, I guess.
yeah,
Israel, the United States, what they're doing, we don't like this. We don't like what we're seeing in Gaza, and the Iranians are trying to stand
right,
up to the people that are doing this.
right.
So if they make that argument and people in the West hear it, it just will further delegitimize the Israeli government as well as the American government. It's like, you're right, this is absurd. Why are we sending billions and billions to Israel and might go to war on their behalf for some ridiculous concern demand of these nuclear weapons program in Iran, or the protests or the ballistic missiles? It's like whichever one you want to take. The humanitarian aspect, like, oh, we care about the Muslims in Iran so much that they're killing them. Meanwhile, we have a genocide that they've been unleashing on Gaza over the past 2 years. That argument is completely absurd. The nuclear argument, it's completely absurd. Everybody is now aware of the Samson option. It's like, okay, the country that is saying that if we don't get our way, we might blow up the world is the one that's making these demands. Like, it's
Yeah,
crazy,
right. Yeah,
The
no,
whole
it
thing
is.
is so.
Right, it is.
It just frustrates me. It's like, why? Well, why aren't we seeing that? I don't think I think maybe the Iranians themselves don't understand how much the world has changed in the past 2 or 3 years, what the attitudes are in the Western world, that how, like, so many people are, we're behind them more than we're behind Israel and the United States
Yeah.
now.
Well, still in the West, again, Iran has been demonized for such a long time that there still is a real hatred of the Islamic Republic in the West in general, and a belief that it is, it's evil and it has to go. Unfortunately, that really hasn't changed, and that actually showed recently because, the media outlets or channels that pointed out what we pointed out. The frank admission on part of the Americans and the Israelis that they basically engineered these protests and then poured fuel on the fire. That just was not reported elsewhere. It just wasn't, and even within outlets that are often pretty good about Palestine, for example. It just there is this the again, this propaganda operation or this hatred of Iran goes way, way back, and there's a huge kind of let's say information warfare network, anti-Islamic Republic warfare, both in English and in Persian, and a lot of money. I think it may actually be in the billions. It's enormous, and it actually swamps. Like the Iranians themselves say that here they're the country of 90 million, but they don't produce as much. They don't output as much information as this anti-Iranian network does. So it again both in English and in Persian, and that has had an impact. It even has had an impact within Iran. You see this happens. I mean, people are impoverished, and then you're constantly hearing, that it's actually the fault of your government, and a certain percentage of people will start to believe it. I think it's most definitely a minority, and that minority, the next time Israel or the U.S. attacks and starts, bombing buildings in Tehran, that minority will pretty much vanish to zero. But it's there, and it does have an impact on Iranian politics. And it
Right.
does make them, I think it does actually apply a certain amount of pressure. In a way, you can say that this long-term operation to topple the government has had some success. It does pressure them to look, for sanctions relief, to look to finally get these guys off our back, because they're hurting us. They're hurting us, both through political pressure and economic pressure, and there's always the threat of a military attack.
Yeah, well, I agree. I think they've been largely successful with that, and most people don't really understand what's going on. I mean, I didn't really understand until I started having these conversations with you. But it's the majority of people in the West may think Iran's evil, but that doesn't matter so much because I think more people in the West think that Israel and America are more evil, and that's really what matters. If this was done prior to October 7th, they could probably get away with it. The propaganda would be more effective. But like you said, it doesn't work anymore when you say, "Oh, we got to save the protesters." And we're like, "Wait a second. First of all, we got ICE protests in Minnesota and our agents shooting people in the streets, and then we just saw what happened in Gaza.
It still is happening in Gaza.
Still happening in Gaza
right.
for over 2 years. We've just been seeing this horror show live streamed to our phone. So it's like that. It doesn't work. It's like, okay, Iran's evil. We agree with that, but the people that are saying that are the ones that are committing a genocide. They're more evil. So even if their propaganda is effective, it doesn't. I think it's irrelevant now because the people that are pushing out the propaganda or that are behind it, the populations here in the West recognize that this is the true evil, or more evil than Iran.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And well, one thing is that all those people, like those leftists that are joining these denunciations of the Iranian government, they need to understand, what is it? What's going on here? Why has Iran been under these sanctions? Why has Iran been attacked? Why does it have this huge information warfare network directed against it? Why are we constantly being told that they're evil? Why? Because there's really only one reason. It's nothing to do with democracy. It clearly isn't, because actually Iran is, by any standard, is just one of the most democratic countries in the region. And much more democratic than Saudi Arabia or any of these other Gulf monarchies. It has nothing to do with that. If that was your concern, you would be attacking Saudi Arabia or Qatar or something like that. No, it's because Iran has actually supported the Palestinians, and that makes them an enemy to Israel. And that's why they, have this target on their back. And so if you are concerned, if your eyes were opened about, during the Gaza genocide, and that becomes a major concern, understand, that's why you're being told to hate Iran, is because they have supported the Gazans, they have supported the Palestinians. And that's why that's why your mind has been manipulated to hate them. But why? Again, because of their support for the Palestinians. And so I think, having said that, I think that really is something that the Iranians should understand, that they could really break through if, okay, they say these things, but it never gets reported. And so people don't hear it. But if you made these clear demands to say, okay, we will do this, we'll make these concessions on our nuclear program if the ceasefire is observed and you stop killing Gazans. Well, I think that would actually wake up a lot of these leftists and other people, not just leftists, but various people who are sympathetic with the Palestinians, but have decided they need to hate Iran for this reason. They, wait a second, this is one of the very few countries that's actually supporting that. In fact, they have been, but they just haven't. I don't think they've got that message across, and they could do it through those negotiations. So I think that's a good point.
All right. Somebody send this to the Ayatollah. Let him know. This is the way to move forward. Yeah, the language that we use, it is so true that how manipulative it is. Like, because whenever you hear the term mullahs or the Ayatollah, you immediately just like, oh, oof, something scary here. But then when we talk about, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, then I'm like, wait a second, is it better to have a king as opposed to a moral religious leader that is looking at it from this point of view? Because You think about it, like the Iranians, they're Shias, right? They're Shiite Muslims, and they are protecting their Sunni brothers in Gaza and Palestine. And even though there's always been conflicts between the Shias and the Sunnis, whereas the Saudi Arabia, it's a Sunni monarch, and they're just allowing this to happen to the Sunnis in Palestine. And so you just start to think about, like, that in our mind, like, oh, somehow a king in Saudi Arabia is good, but this religious leader, the Ayatollah, is somehow evil, because we've just been told, like, it's just part of just making Islam just like an evil thing, and that somehow represents some evil, the great Satan. Yeah. But it's all getting flipped on its head now when we start to realize, like, wait a second, who's the great Satan? Is it the countries that are being, ruled by elite pedophile satanic cabal? Or is it the guys that are trying to stop the genocide? It's like, you stop and think about it. It's like, right?
Yeah. Okay. Right.
I don't know if I had a question with there. Just a comment. Well, let's see. I just the way that I've seen Iran operate, I don't feel like that will happen, though. What we're saying, that they'll put.
Well, I think especially again under Pezeshkian, and I guess maybe, we always somehow when we say the Ayatollah, we imagine somebody, some fire-breathing, despot, but he clearly isn't that, and his powers are limited. Again, there are many democratic institutions within Iran. They have elections that really mean something, again, which you don't find in other countries in the region. So again, if our concern is democracy, that's the last country we should be attacking. It's amazing just how, again, I think how blind so many people in the West are. They're just like, dogs that are told to attack, you're trained to attack this person, and just say, but obviously haven't stopped to think about or make any effort to understand, what the region is. They have no, in general, it's just like Westerners have no understanding of Islam and the great variety that exists within it. And they tend to conflate all these groups, again, the Sunni extremists, the jihadis, somehow that spills over and they make an association with Iran, when of course Iran has, and Shias in general, have been victims of these jihadi attacks, more so than Christians and, other Westerners, much more so. But again, there's just no understanding of that, no awareness of that. And a big part of the problem is ignorance. Again, George W. Bush didn't even know the difference between Sunnis and Shias when he decided to invade Iraq. And he had no interest in understanding. It's just crazy.
Well, that's intentional, right? I mean, the fact that we don't understand and that we're just taught to hate. I mean, and who is behind that, right? It's behind it is, we know who's behind it, right? It's Israel, right? It's the Zionists.
To a great extent. Again, I won't say 100%, but to a very great extent. I think there's no question about it. There is, like I think I've made this point before, there is some, let's say, non-Zionist linked hatred of and fear of Iran, that especially goes back to the hostage episode, the 444 days during which the American embassy staff were held hostage by the revolutionaries, and there was a lot of anger. I remember that time. It was a big deal, but that's a long time ago. Again, it really is. We're talking better than 45 years, and a lot has happened since then. And even then, the thing is, why was there that anger in Iran? Why did they explode and do that? Okay, yeah, they shouldn't have taken those hostages. Well, they had a democratically elected government back in the 1950s, and we did overthrow it. It was a CIA-sponsored coup, Mossadegh. And, we put in the Shah over them, and they didn't want that. They blew up, right then we said, okay, we're even. But there are people within the U.S. administration that have a memory of that. And they still, it irks them, and they want to take revenge. So that's part of it, but I think it's mostly what you say. It's clear. I mean, again, it's not like the Israelis have been trying to hide this. They have been making this clear year after year after year for decades. I remember, I think it was maybe it was the editor of Middle East Eye or something. He said that he actually met Netanyahu way back in the early 2000s. And the first sentence that came out of Netanyahu's mouth is that, we've got to destroy Iran, or, something to that effect.
Yeah, we know that this has been his lifelong dream. And you know, I think it's true. We have always been kind of told who to hate, and they've been very effective at that.
Yeah.
And I think it's worked very well, especially after the wake of 9/11, and then the boogeyman just became just Muslims in general. You know, it just this blanket hatred, and it's being fueled. But I think it's falling apart now, and it's not working. They can't, and people are starting to realize, wait a second, who is telling us to hate this division? And I feel like it's not just with the Middle East. I think it's also internally here in the United States with making the left hate the right. And I think a lot of people are waking up like, wait a second, all of you guys, it's not left or right. It's all of you guys at the top that are evil, that are in control, and that this division is intentional. The being told to hate. And now I think what's happening is that the hatred's still there, but it's being focused now towards the Zionist. Is that people understand, and I think that is very scary for them, because this is something new. This is something we've never seen in the history of Israel, where all of a sudden the West is waking up and be like, wait a second, why are we being told to hate all these people and for all these reasons? Why are we funding your country to commit a genocide? And why are you telling us how we should think and behave? They're starting to understand that. And so I feel like there's this huge backlash coming, and I don't think Israel's ready for this. The Zionists aren't ready for this. I'm sure they are aware of it, and the more that they're trying to fight it and clamp down, the more obvious it becomes to people that, hey, you are trying to control us. You are trying to divide us. You are trying to direct our hatred for your own personal gains. And this is going to have
your own ideology,
or your own ideologies,
yeah,
right?
right, for your own project. You know, the expansionist Zionism.
Right. So I think that's what's happening. And how does that play out? Know, as this, because it's, sometimes I feel like I think we're in a bubble. Like I get worried, like, are we even allowed to talk about this? Because are we just, are we one of the few people that have been awoken, and we're part of that, the small people that are noticing these things, and now we're speaking about it, and we got to be careful. But then I go on just social media, on Instagram, whatever, it's everywhere. Everybody knows. There's all these hilarious memes like, people waking up thinking, realizing I have to pay taxes to Israel so that they can continue their pedophile cabal and their, whatever it is. It's so, I think anybody under the age of 40, the vast majority of those people are aware. And so
right. Yeah, I don't know if it's a vast majority, but I think it's in truth a majority. There's no question about it. That's what the polls are showing. People are like 35 and under. There's been a remarkable shift, and it goes across the political spectrum. It's stronger on the left, but it's quite significant on the right too.
Right.
Yeah. So it is for real. And again, the Israelis and in general, these Israel firsters are aware of this, and they are panicking, and they're doing things. They're buying up. We've talked about all this. They're fighting the battle on the Eighth Front. It's so they know it's a real problem.
Right, but they can't win this battle because they're in the wrong. The only thing that they can do is go more and more authoritarian, and the more and more authoritarian you go, the clearer it becomes, and the greater the potential backlash and the anger. And especially if you think about, we said it's like people under the age of 35. These are the people that you need to have go fight your wars for you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so if you're going to go to a war in the Middle East and you need to get conscript soldiers, or even the existing soldiers, that people that are in the active service right now, like they know how to use social media. They get in contact with their peers back home. I'm sure a lot of them are starting to wake up and become aware of it. So like this in itself, just how can you get these people to go fight when you're saying like, okay, go fight, we're the bad guys? It's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
At least that's what I...
Yeah, no, it's right. You're right. I think it does look pretty grim in the medium to long term for the Israel firsters here. I think that they are losing the war. They're losing control. They're fighting back, and they may have some successes. They may win some battles, but I think they're going to lose the war.
How can they win? I mean, it's going to just be...
Well, again, there is that kind of very large, uninformed, generally apolitical, center part of the spectrum that, became aware of some of these things, through algorithms on TikTok. That's gone. And we're seeing something similar happening on X right now. So that is going to have an impact, but I think it's only going to slow down the process. And it may, for those who are aware or, we're just becoming aware, they'll become even more aware. They just say, wait a second. It's just like, it's just the intervention is so obvious. Like, you said you went on TikTok and you tried to put that, it was just actually the speech that Scott Bessent gave, our own Secretary of Treasury, and they shut it down because we're not supposed to know about this. I mean, that's quite extraordinary. That actually has nothing to do with Zionism, I would say. Well, no, it did, because it was about Iran. It was definitely linked with it. Okay, yeah, forgive me. But it's just so glaringly obvious that it just got to make people who are already aware of becoming aware just are going to be that much more aware.
Yeah, well, the thing is, people are creative when it comes to censorship. You can't, they can never lock it down. When it's already reached this critical mass and people understand, there will be always some type of, people will adopt a different wording or a picture to symbolize whatever it is. I remember when I was in the lockdowns in China during COVID, like my time in China was amazing, except towards the very end. It wasn't until Omicron got into Shanghai. And before, actually, people don't believe it, but, the first in 2019, 2020, 2021, it was actually quite open in China. They really did achieve COVID zero. You can travel around free. But then in 2022, in the spring, some Omicron came in and we had a total lockdown. So I was locked down in my apartment for over a month. And people were getting very upset in Shanghai. I mean, you shut down a city of like 30 million people completely. People were getting upset, but the government wanted to achieve this COVID zero, so they had this draconian policy, and then they were trying to stop people kind of protesting online about it, but it didn't work. Everybody knew, of course, and so everybody started posting just on WeChat, just a white picture, just a blank white picture, and that became a symbol, and everybody did things like that. You can't stop. And then another one was just a song that got played over and over again that started going viral. So this is just an example of China, which has very strict internet controls. They can't do it, and they understood. And after a while, they realized, okay, we can't achieve COVID zero with Omicron. And then they rapidly changed policy and said, everybody has to look out for their own health, their best.
Right.
Good luck, everybody. And then it was over. But that's kind of how it happened.
Right. Yeah, well, I think that certainly applies to those people who are already aware, of what's going on, aware of Zionist influence and aware of the genocide in Gaza, and those efforts to censor, to hide information from those people, which is now a considerable portion of the population, where before we're talking about much less than 5%. It's like, I don't know, 20% or something now. I don't know. But it's a considerable portion of the population. Yeah, they're going to find lots of ways. It's very easy, to find uncensored sources of information. My concern is those people who don't, are apathetic or uninformed, and before it was algorithms would actually sometimes push information to them that would wake them up. And those people, it's going to be harder to wake up those people. I think that's the problem.
We'll see. I think that the people will get creative and will find ways. I don't think they can lock it down, but
yeah, maybe there are people, those activists will find ways to get the information out to those people that need to see it.